Welcome to the inaugural episode of Public Access Punks. Today, we're hanging out with John Agnello. If you've listened to music within the last 3 decades, chances are you've heard something he's recorded. John's career started out at the legendary record plant in New York and went on to help shape albums by Sonic Youth, Dinosaur Jr., The Hold Steady, Kurt Vile. The list is crazy. John's known for capturing that raw, live energy that bands bring into the studio and turning it into something that lasts. And today, we're going to talk about his process, what it's like to be behind the boards for some of the most influential records of the last few decades. In particular, we're going to talk about his part in what a lot of punk fans consider one of the most influential records of the 2000s, In Name and Blood by Seattle's Murder City Devils. Sub Pop released this album in 2000. It was their 3rd album, and the first and only one with John behind the boards.
All right.
John, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. This
is fun. I really appreciate this. Yeah, it will be fun, I hope. So we're going to talk about, In Name and Blood, right? Murder City Devils, 25 years old this year.
Yeah.
Right? So we'll get to that. We got a lot to talk about that. But, you've done a lot in the music industry, and you don't need a whole lot of introduction. But, if you have been... if you listen to pop music in the last 30 years, there's probably something that you've touched, I would say. I mean, I'm just saying that. But, your background, you started in the late 70s, early 80s at Record Plant.
So I was in Brooklyn College, 77 to 78. My summer job in Brooklyn College was working for a company called Eventide that did audio gear. I grew up with older brothers, and my oldest brother always was listening to Bob Dylan, Grateful Dead, Velvet Underground in the house, in a very strict Italian Sicilian household where my parents listened to Ben Emilio Giglio, the opera singer. You know what I mean? It was crazy.
Right.
Anyway, older brothers are hippies. I follow form, by the time I'm 15, 16, we're going into the city and going to concerts, Pink Floyd, Todd Rundgren, whoever, Yes, and all that shit.
Right.
I have tons of,
great time to see rock and roll in the city, right?
So then I start working at this company, Eventide, that does audio gear for, digital audio gear.
Yeah.
They were groundbreaking.
Right.
And, in the summers, I'm even putting together boards and soldering or finding the dead rat in the storage room in the basement. I'm doing all kinds of stuff. 79, I'm kind of getting burnt in college.
Yep.
It's the beginning of 79, and my brother gets me an interview with Paul Sloman, who was the manager of the record plant in New York City, which was a very, big deal studio back then. They had 4 rooms, and, it was... so back in the 70s and 80s, there weren't a lot of recording studios, and, obviously it was all tape.
Yeah.
And you needed a record company budget.
Right.
Unless you were a millionaire, or else you couldn't, do that.
Right.
So the record plant was one of those places like Electric Lady, Media Sound. But, we had 4 rooms, and I just leave college. I don't even go back in that day. I get the job, and I show up the next day, and I don't even say anything to Brooklyn College or anything. So my friends know I'm gone, but everybody else thinks I'm dead or in jail. So it was really kind of bizarre, but I did start working at what they call the tape library.
Okay.
So there weren't really interns. We were tape librarians, and our major jobs were to clean the rooms every morning before the sessions, and then to catalog all the tapes being used.
Gotcha.
So, for example, Bruce Springsteen, Darkness at the Edge of Town. I mean, they kind of, he went through like 200 reels of tape because he recorded 100 songs and then finally came up with the 10 on the record. Wow. But, you'd have to go in the morning and write down song title, the takes and all that. There was a project number for the whole record and then, real number. And it was
truly librarian.
Oh, dude, it was crazy. So literally on the top of the roof, there's a big room, locked and all that, a separate entrance from outside, and it's the tape vault.
Okay.
And there's one in the basement too. So you'd have shelves of tapes. And the point of the tape librarian was, if Columbia wanted a Springsteen tape and you couldn't find it, you were fucked, and
Sure.
it was bad for the studio, and you'd get fired.
Right.
So, and then if someone did want a tape, you would have to basically have them sign it out, so you had proof it went to Columbia, or it went to Bruce, or it went to his manager, or whoever. It was a big deal.
It's a big money library.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
So long story short, I started in 79, and the good news was, like, by 81, I was kind of assisting for people.
Okay.
And, once again, I said it to a friend of mine this morning. We were talking at the YMCA, but I said to him, it's like, you got to understand, I was in rooms running tape machines and doing stuff, patching for really legendary and amazing, talented producers and engineers.
Yeah.
And the good news about 1981 is there's no cell phones, so I'm not distracted by anything. I'm literally running the tape machine, but watching how they're doing their thing.
Yeah.
And even little things from, like, a famous engineer, Sheliakis, who's a wonderful guy, still know him. Like, I learned on a Meatloaf record, Dead Ringer, I learned how to ride the toms, and I have to lean over their shoulders because 3 other people were mixing at the console, but I was the kid leaning over, and I would just ride the toms up when they hit so you wouldn't hear the leakage. And I did it every time we did a pass.
Oh, wow.
And so it was stuff like that you just learned how to do all that. And I would write down where the tom fills are. I'd have a paper with, 105, 110, and I would do that. But the point is, I just learned a lot from Jack Douglas, Bill Whitman, Dave Thoner, like I said, Sheliakis. Even Jimmy Iovine was producing at that point.
Okay.
There, it was crazy.
Yeah.
Fucking crazy. So anyway, I was very lucky, and I learned good stuff, and I was able to, maintain it, and honestly not fuck up so bad to get fired. I always joked around, I just can't get fired.
Right.
Because if I did, I had nothing to back up with. I quit college.
So you built in some desperation and some...
I had no choice. It was
Fantastic.
like, if it didn't happen, it would have been a calamity.
So you've already mentioned, Springsteen.
Right.
You've mentioned Dead Ringer, right?
Right.
A great Meatloaf album.
Right.
You're sitting there watching this music being made. I mean, do you really have a concept when you're that age of what's really going on in front of you, or are you just it's burning by so fast? You're the guy over the shoulder getting stuff done, soaking up all the knowledge you can.
I mean, I was an assistant for like 2 years.
Yeah.
So I went from being, the low level stuff to then when I became the top assistant, I was doing all the big stuff that would come in. So, it was just repetition.
Right.
You know what I mean? After just being immersed in that room, 12 hours a day for 2 years.
Sure.
Yeah, you do suck up a lot of info. And, and I learned how to be an engineer. And, also then, 10 years later or 12 years later, I learned how to also produce.
Right.
In the beginning, I was just a glorified engineer, but honestly, I learned how I was like, okay, I'm not really doing anything producer-wise. Mm-hmm. I'm just engineering with an opinion. Yeah. And that's not really a producer. So I kind of made myself learn how to do that kind of stuff, arrangements, harmonies, add parts, play, come up with ideas for section, how to help bands form the songs. So
making that transition from, say, engineer to being a producer, I imagine that creative process that you're talking about is, how do you get your head right to do that? Is it just something, like you said, out of necessity? You're like, hey, I got to figure out how to do this because they put me on the label as producer, or where do you get your ideas? Is it just you formed it over years, just watching how it's, you said 12 years. That's I guess the magic of producing is that you get to not only give your opinion, but you become kind of part of the artistic process, right?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a good example, which I always reference because everybody makes fun of me because of this. But I engineered a Red Cross record, Phase Shifter. Mm-hmm. They were phenomenal. We were in L.A., and they had a song called Mammoth, I think it was called. I can check back on that.
Okay.
But and the record's great. It's like such a, like, I loved my involvement. There was a little issue after the fact where they realized after the fact they should have given me a co-production credit, but they didn't, and I didn't care because I just was like, fine. Yeah. But they did this stuff at the, Monolith was the song, sorry.
Okay.
And the song ends, like the last chorus hits, and every time the chorus goes around, they modulate the key of the song up. So the chorus repeats 3 times, and every time it gets brighter and brighter.
Right.
And I was like, what the fuck is that? And then I was listening to music, and I heard it in Beatles songs and this and that. So now the joke is, my wife, when she hears like something I worked on, she goes, "Oh, you made them modulate over there?" And I was like, "Yes, I did." So I also
it's that thing I learned that one time.
Yeah. Now I incorporate all the fucking time because it's a great hook.
Well, you know? I mean, it's like anything, you know. If you're learning an art, you know, it's just a technique, right? You know how to look. I need to brighten it up. This is the thing I know to do, and it
bring
works.
It home at the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but the other thing they were really good at is harmonies. They were 2 brothers. They were 2 brothers, and they do. It's almost like the punk or the grunge version of like Blood harmonies, because the singer Jeff sang, and then Steven, the bass player, always would come out and do the harmonies, and it got me so fixated on harmonies that I would drive around in my car, listen to cassettes of records and try to harmonize on top of those songs.
So, do you have a musical background?
Well, both my brothers are musicians.
Yeah.
I never was because I was a concert kid, but then over the years I learned, I'm still not a musician, but, you know, I had Mark Lanigan on, I think it was Field Music. I came up with a harmony idea for one of the verses, and he just made me go out and do it. And I was like, dude, I'm not a singer. And he was like, well, I'm going to go get a sandwich. You do it. And I was like, holy shit. So I ended up being on the song, and then he rewrote the lyrics after I left because he didn't like the lyrics. So they recut it. So I'm not on the song anymore, but I still have mixes of me on that song.
That's awesome.
So it's like really bizarre.
So, you know, you've worked with Mark Lanigan, you know, and kind of famous for that partnership, I think. Talk about some of the other names if people don't know, and you know, Cyndi Lauper, right?
Yeah, I mean,
you know?
So that's the very beginning, the assistant phase. And then, you know, the Cyndi Lauper thing, she was in a band called Blue Angel out of Staten Island.
Yep.
Epic Records, I think it was Lenny Pizzi at Epic, signed her as a solo artist, and he put together an amazing team. Rick Chertoff, who was also a Columbia A&R man, but a really great music guy. And the engineer was William Whitman, Bill Whitman, one of my engineering mentors. And I just assisted on this record that, you know, I honestly did it. I loved Girls Just Want to Have Fun and Time After Time.
Sure.
But the point was, I wasn't going, oh, this is going to be a huge hit. I never do that. You know what I mean, with this stuff, because you never know. Because the thing is, you make the music, but then you hand it over to the business, and it depends on, you know, if they make it happen.
Right.
You know what I mean? The business end is really tough.
Sure.
Still to this day, I've done amazing records for labels that I thought, this is a no-brainer, and then it's like the record label doesn't work it the right way, and then it doesn't happen. Yeah. So, but long story short, and the thing with the Cyndi record was I was the assistant engineer on a dinner break where she stayed with the keyboard player from the Hooters, Rob Hyman, and they kind of finished Time After Time while I was breaking down the drums and setting up for the next thing that night, while everybody else was out of the room, you know, downtown or down the block eating.
Yeah.
And I heard them pounding out Time After Time, and I was like, this is kind of fucking cool.
Yeah.
Did I say this is going to be a hit? No, but I was like, this is a cool fucking song. I mean, that's kind of cool what they're doing. This is weird. Amazing. You know? So anyway, but stuff like that happened. You know, I assisted on John Cougar's record, Pink Houses.
Wow.
Ain't That America, that song, John Waite's Missing You, God, the first Twisted Sister record, We're Not Gonna Take It. I assisted on the basic tracks.
Wow.
That was fun.
Wow.
So that was a fun record to assist on. It was just the basic tracks in Studio A of the record plant. Jeff Workman, a British guy who was actually one of my idols from all the Queen records, he was the engineer. So I got to spend 10 days with him, which was magical,
just
probably even more.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of that stuff. And even I was a big UFO fan as a kid, and I got to assist on 2 Michael Schenker records.
Wow.
Which blew my mind, and I was just in awe of him the whole time. It was just crazy.
That's fantastic.
So yeah, it was, like I said, it was a lot of what I feel lucky about and happy about is a lot of it was right place, right time.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, I really did work hard, and I make sure people liked, you know what I mean? I was nice and going out of my way, and people liked me because I was really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
For sure. We could talk all day about.
No, I know. Yeah.
You know, the not only that time frame, fantastic music. You know, and infamously, you know, there's tons of Wikipedia stuff about you being in the room when Kiss kicks off Dynasty, and you know Tom Petty's you know Damn the Torpedoes is getting recorded across. And
that was previous to me.
But it was that sort of crossover, and Record Plant is such kind of notorious for having that sort of, I don't know, you want to say genre bending. It wasn't just like, hey, you know, we're an all punk shop, we're an all hard rock shop. It's just everybody showed up there. You know, I mean, Electric Ladyland got recorded there, parts of it, right?
Because this Electric Lady studio wasn't finished.
It wasn't finished,
so,
and you know, those are the types of stories that I love about Record Plant. You know, and just hearing. I don't know. To me, it was almost like the kickoff to that sort of, I don't know, I could say that every home studio, right? Everybody who's got like a nice thing in their basement with the rugs out and sort of that low-key environment. I mean, that's the other thing the Record Plant was famous for, is that it wasn't like, you know, sort of the Hollywood type studios or the Los Angeles type studios where it's all like hardboard and baffles and, you know, kind of hermetically sealed off from the rest of the planet. It was almost kind of like an environment built to be creative.
Yeah, no, it was definitely, and it was kind of like a cool open door policy with a lot of stuff where, you know, Iggy Pop would go into Studio B where they were working, even though we were up in Studio C, he'd go in and like say hello and hang out for a while. So, you know, you could turn around and be like, holy shit, what is he doing in here?
Right.
But nobody cared because everybody was working and it didn't matter. But it was pretty fun like that. And the lounge on the first floor, you know, Studio A would take a break and Studio B would take a break, and they'd all be just hanging out in the lounge talking. And it was like so just natural, stuff like that.
Did you ever see anything come of everybody like, hey, come in, sit in here, or like cross-pollination between rooms? Like
my favorite one, which I wasn't there for, it was way before my time, and once again with Bruce Springsteen in Studio A tracking, and then he had a song that he couldn't figure out lyrics or melody, so he gave Patti Smith, who was in Studio B, the cassette of the song, and she turned it into Because the Night.
Wow.
And that to me beats anything I could tell you.
Yeah.
That is such, because once again, I was obsessed with both artists as a kid.
Yeah, absolutely.
So knowing I was in the building where that happened like 5 years ago, was just like, holy shit.
Yeah. That's
so
fantastic.
No, it was pretty great stuff.
Fantastic. Well, we could talk about this all day.
No, I know.
You know, we're here to really talk about what, you know, we've talked about this kind of off camera before. Scotty, who's, you know, our producer, and I talk about this when we're picking out, you know, subject matter, you know, and we're talking about In Name and Blood, Murder City Devils. You know, you recorded it in 1999. It was their third album, I think.
I think it was their third album.
Yeah, their third album. So, and to me, if you like American punk, right, it's one of those that stands out because it's of a certain time. Mm-hmm. It is kind of in a really cool transition time between, I think, tastes in sort of indie alternative type music. You know, everybody was trying to figure out what was going to come after grunge. It was recorded by Sub Pop, or on the Sub Pop label, right? So, I mean, all of that happened in Seattle, and it sort of, you know, had great critical acclaim. I mean, people really love that. Even to this day, if you like punk, you know, people bring it up, right? Yeah. And you know, I'm curious, how did you hook up with Murder City Devils? Was that something that they came to you? Did the label say, hey, John, we've got this, we'd love for you to record it? What was the setup? Do you remember what was going on there? Well,
I think what was going on is during the grunge phase, which I'm going to guess was, you know, between 93 and like 97 or something.
Yeah.
I was in Seattle quite a bit.
Okay.
working with Truly, or working
Right.
with the Screaming Trees, or working with Mike Johnson from
Right.
Dinosaur Jr., who
Sure.
had a solo record, Year of Mondays, on Atlantic, and I produced that with him, and we did that all there. So, and I think a lot of, like, Leslie from Murder City Devils was his girlfriend at that point when we were doing the solo record, and they broke up soon after that.
Gotcha.
So I knew Leslie.
Okay.
And I kind of feel like I knew Spencer from a previous band he was in. And then Seattle, on Sundays in the area called Ballard, there was a bowling alley, and they would do like grunge bowling on Sundays. And if I was in town working, we'd have off, and it could be Ben Shepherd is there, and I don't know, just whoever would show up, and all these people. So you would meet all these people, and it wasn't just like Ben Shepherd and his friends. It was like people from different. Tad would go, and Kurt Danielson, who was his bass player.
Right.
So I think it was because of the community that they knew who I was, and they heard the Dino records. They heard just the Mike record, which was real mellow, but also everybody loved Mark, Blanigan, and I was locked in with him pretty well at that point.
Right.
So I feel like, and Sub Pop, I knew people at Sub Pop.
Yeah.
And I feel like it was just like, for them, I feel like they just kind of thought I could make them sound the way they sound, but better.
Yeah.
And it was great because I also think they appreciated the fact that, the records I work, I don't really have a stamp in a sense where I change the sound. I just work with the artist and try to bring out, and make it just sound bigger and better and kind of more in your face and more memorable.
And we'll talk about that later. And I think that's one of the things that does stand out about that record in particular, is that it does sound, is clearly their sound, right? But the way that it is, not to fluff you up, but the way that it's produced, it does stand out from the previous two records, you know. So it really, everybody just had a conversation. It made sense. They were gonna
and they felt comfortable with me.
Yeah,
like they didn't feel like a weird guy was going to come in who was going to like kind of buzzkill them.
Yeah,
they knew I was a fun, kind of easygoing and hardworking guy.
Yeah.
So no, it went good. I mean, and like even I just say, like, working with Cody Willis, who played drums, I mean, he was such a phenomenal drummer, and he got, like, we put him in the big room, right in the main room, with not even baffles or anything, and he just, those drums just explode. Like, when he hits well, he plays great, he's got great tempo, and, they're not like a band that you would play to a click track. It's just like, they just raged. And Leslie played all the cool organ parts live. And
really,
we probably fixed stuff. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But anyway, they played great. It was really just fun capturing them.
Yeah.
And once again, I grew up in a world where everybody played live, and you very rarely.
Right.
So yeah, that was for me a great experience, and it was fun. We worked our asses off, So they were really all really nice.
So they were famous for just touring like crazy, right? And so this was recorded in '99, released in 2000, I guess August of 2000. Did they come into the studio with a bunch of material prepared and just sort of like rip into it, or are you sitting there working with them, kind of coming through kind of evolutions of songs that they brought in or ideas as they came into the studio?
I think the only song that they weren't totally locked down on was I'll Come Running.
Okay.
And I think there was something about that was like a last minute idea from somebody outside the band.
Right.
Because it's starkly different from the rest of the record.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But they just wrapped their head around it. It took them a while.
Yeah.
And then also I think they had to figure out the arrangement. You know what I mean? Because it wasn't like a punk song and rehearsed. But they were very rehearsed.
Yeah.
And once again, it's like that whole budgetary thing where you don't have $200,000 to make the record.
Right.
They were smart. They rehearsed their asses off and then came in. But they're all really great musicians. That was the thing.
Yeah.
And Spencer did his thing. Like, he was just always on the money.
Right.
We didn't have to do like 20 tracks of vocals and comp them. You know what I mean? He got it like so fast.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So it just sounds like everything is just sort of wonderfully organic about it, right? the way that you guys hook up, the way that you guys find a comfort with each other, the way that everything sort of gels in the studio. Let's talk about Robert Lang Studios, right?
Yeah.
Famously weird, right? Sort of cliffside and shore. If you know Seattle, the shoreline kind of area there, started off as like famously as a garage, and then sort of an excavation project, right?
Yeah.
And let's talk a little bit about like the main room, kind of where drums are. It's not your typical setup. It's tall, right? Kind of cavernous, literally.
Yeah.
A lot of like stonework. It actually looks like you're a really nice kind of Kirkland house with the woodwork and the stonework and everything else. Architecturally lovely. Not your typical studio setup. So talk about the sound in that room, especially, and I'll talk about drums because that seems to be the drums on this record are fantastic. Just the way
they're very
they sound.
impactful.
And you can sort of hear the room in them, right?
Yeah.
But talk a little bit about recording there, if you will, Robert Lang and drum setup. Let's start with that.
I mean, like I said, the drum setup, I feel like I had him in the main room, and basically close mics and then room mics, and I left it open. The band was in the room with him mostly with headphones on, but it was his room. The amps were tucked away in the back, that back closet that had I think we had 2 amps. Leslie was direct. I think the bass we had kind of covered in a corner, just close mic. And Spencer was in the hallway singing, doing riff info, so they couldn't see him, but they could hear him. But no, Cody just hit so well. That's the thing. It's like, it's like that thing where, you either set up with the drummer and it takes, 15 minutes to get the drum sound, or you set up with a drummer and it takes like an hour.
Right.
Because, the drums aren't tuned right. He's got, problems. He doesn't hit well. And, you have to deal with hi-hat leakage. Another person who I'll bring up currently, who I've worked with a bunch, is Mikey Erg, who he's another one of these guys who's just like a great, like I always say, he's like the session drummer of like punk rock.
Yeah,
now.
for sure.
You know what I mean? He comes in and he's so, he's just so on the money. It takes like 20 minutes to get a drum sound, and then he plays great, and he hits like some guy. Cody just hits like a great drummer.
Yeah.
I won't say professional because that's a weird word. He's just a great drummer.
Right.
So that was a pleasure. But the other thing about that room, because I remember I was listening to the record on the drive here, and Rum to Whiskey came on.
Yeah.
And then, in the chorus, he switched from rum to whiskey, bang, bang. If you hear those bang, bangs and listen to them, that's in the middle of the room with room mics. And you can hear how, the room is just, you can just really hear it. It's very powerful.
Absolutely.
And they're really good, by the way, with that shouting stuff, because that's what they do.
Right.
But at the same time, it just sounds so great in the room. And I'm going to guess we only probably did 2, a track and then doubled it. So 3 of them or 4 of them and then double. So it's not like a million voices like a Queen record. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with Queen records. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying. I'm just giving you a different.
But I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. So the room, it was useful for many things.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. So, you're. I've read, in interviews in the past, you kind of have sort of a. Preferred setups, right? Like shotgun over the snare. I've heard using bass speaker as a kick. I'm gonna
a subwoofer for the thing.
Exactly. Are you using that kind of setup there, or you said it really is just room mics?
So because I traveled there. I did not a broken down. I didn't do a lot of the weird stuff I normally do.
Okay.
Just because I was traveling there and I couldn't bring all this stuff, and if they didn't have it, it was hard to get it.
Right.
But I think I took the shotgun with me because I've been doing that for a while, and that's a very small, thin mic that you can just put in your suitcase and then off you go.
Yeah.
I did have a funny thing. where one time going through, well, back then it wasn't TSA, but flying on the plane. Well, actually it was TSA at that point because this was after 9/11, but I did get pulled because of the microphone. And I said, sorry, sir, it is a microphone, but I said, I'm sorry, it is called a shotgun microphone, but I'm not going to kill anybody with it.
Oh.
And he looked at me and just like, dude, you're not funny.
Yeah. Things not to say, still to this day, right? That's interesting. I guess, reading about your setups and kind of the way that you sort of tune the room to what's going on with the particular band, hearing the way that you're saying that drums are struck by the musician, you always wonder if, I always wonder, is there a formula that you have to go to like all the time and you got to be hard and fast about it? But it sounds like, if you got it, use it. If not, be flexible.
Right. Yeah. And
it still sounds great.
Yeah. Well, that's once again, so, the whole chain of a great sounding, instruments are, it starts at the musician.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they play great, and then the mic picks it up,
right,
sends it into the control room with me, and then I tweak it a little bit. You know what I mean? It's like it really just starts with that person.
Yeah.
And I feel like, once again, you're lucky enough to be with people who play great.
Right.
You're going to be in really good shape. I will say I do, for that record, I did, have my standard mic setup, like the U47 on the bass drum on the outside, KM84 with a pad on the snare drum with a 57 next to it taped together.
Okay.
With the hi-hats, I tend to put like a towel or paper towels in the middle to deaden it so it doesn't leak into the snare.
Right.
I think back then I was doing on the toms, top mic and bottom mic, but after a while I just was like, that's just a lot. But I did really like the bottom mic because it also made the tone sometimes, made the hit longer.
Okay.
The tone.
Okay.
So I did all that, and I did the thing where I measure with mic cables from the drummer's seat, and I do an isosceles triangle with the room mic, so they're equidistant between the drummer, left mic, drummer, right mic, and left mic to right mic. So they're equally the right place, you know what I mean, from the snare drum.
Gotcha.
So I'm pretty, that's kind of like
got your
a
science,
nutty, kind of type A thing, but I do like doing that. And I always felt like it works, and it's very easy to do.
And then adjust from there.
Yeah, well, I don't even adjust. I just set it up, and it's like that's where the mics are staying. I even tape down the mics so they don't move. I just, I was like,
okay. Talk to me a little bit about Leslie's playing on the record, right?
I mean, she was just so great, and I, like I said, I liked her previously when she was dating Mike. I got along with her really great.
Yeah.
She was just one of those people. But then, when she would play those riffs on the keyboard, it would just be like, wow. Like, I started the record today in the car and Press Gang comes on, and it's that whole beginning of just her playing that riff, and it's just like, wow, talk about setting a mood for the first song on side one of the record.
Exactly.
Like, give me a fucking break.
It sets the tone for the record, really.
Yeah, it's dark but awesome.
Yeah, and it maybe it's a differentiator, right, between this album and the previous two for them, I think, for sure. Her playing direct, amp, I think
it was mostly direct in the beginning. We might have done overdubs with it, amp, like redoing it.
Yeah.
I think we had a little bit of a, once again, a scenario in Robert Lang where there wasn't a ton of room for like 1 million amps.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
So I think we took her direct and probably maybe even reamped it later.
Okay.
Or recut it. Like I said, I think some of the songs I remember, the guitars maybe weren't right, so we go back in and redo them.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right. And that's fine. But, the spirit of the record is very live.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So any pedals or any effects on like that on the Farfisa at all? Or
I don't remember I don't think they were much of a pedal band.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I just don't. Maybe the guitar players had something, but it wasn't like, if you listen, it's really just the sound. And I think maybe on the Farfisa there is like a reverby thing or something you could put on the Farfisa, and I think that's what she used, because I don't remember, because I also really am, I'm a pedal guy. I joke I'm like a pedophile. Yeah, exactly. The worst joke ever.
We're gonna have to filter that or put some captions on it to make sure it doesn't.
But the point is, yeah, I don't remember that being such a huge thing. I mean, and I think guitars came, they came out of the amp sounding great. I mean, they really did what they did.
Yeah, and that's something I've got to ask about the guitars, right? So pretty meat and potatoes, seems pretty direct. Les Pauls through Marshalls, that kind of sound, for the most part. Maybe some pedal, but just pretty straightforward. And what's, to me personally, and this is a taste thing, what's kind of lovely about this record is that they never compete with the vocals.
Yeah, never.
And talk to me a little bit about the thought process, because so much, I think, so many recordings, punkish recordings during this time, you listen to it and it seems like vocals are either screaming over guitars or guitars are, you lose vocals and lyrics behind guitar.
Yeah.
So
I think, now that I think about it with the amps, they did a really funny thing. I forget which one of them did it. While we were getting sounds, he was having a problem with his tone. He went to Guitar Center, bought an amp, we used it, and then at the end of tracking, he brought it back to Guitar Center and returned it because he had a 30-day thing. And I had never seen that before in the studio, and I thought that was the funniest. Like, I was like, dude, you are amazing. So that was pretty good. But yeah, no, they were, it's just that, like I said, that thing. They really were in tune with what they wanted to sound like. And it probably also comes from them playing so much live.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they knew what they wanted to come out of their amps because they were constantly doing it live. And then, they set their stuff up, and I put my, U87, my Neumann with a pad right on the cone.
Right.
And then a 421 right on the cone because I want it really close. And, I know people record guitar amps like with room mics and stuff.
Yeah.
But my thing has always been, and it's the same case on the Dinosaur Jr. records and stuff like Sonic Youth records, was always, I don't want that much air between the speaker and the microphone because I want the guitar to jump out of your face.
Okay.
Out of the speaker, sorry, not out of, into your face.
Right.
So the further away you are, there's just a little more air.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the reason why those guitars are really massive, because the mics are just, like, if this is the guitar mic and this is the speaker, it's like right there.
Oh, but you can still kind of feel the room, overall, and maybe that's...
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. That's interesting because you can definitely feel it, like Intro to Idle Hands,
Right.
It still feels bigger that way. So,
I also put up talkback mics.
Okay.
Yeah, so people could talk to me, and sometimes I record them.
Okay.
And I might leave them on for an intro or something like that if I need it, or for an effect.
Okay.
But I don't do that all the time. That's like every now and then.
And then layering of guitars, it seems really minimal. Left, right, and they're there, right?
Yeah.
Maybe accents as you're building up into a chorus, you might layer, double up one, maybe two, just to sort of build up, almost like building up dynamics with guitar layering, right?
Yeah.
Or Leslie gets a big swell into.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
You have these three major instruments, the two guitars and the keyboard. And I mean, they're in your face. I mean, they're all in your face. So, and then you have, the heavy voice. I mean, it's not like just singing. It's like that's in your face. Yeah. You know what I mean? They're all like right. And once again, the bass and drums, they're blasting away too. It's just it's not like it's not like artificial in any way. You know what I mean? It's not like using plugins or something like that to make it all like, because that gets a little ear-weary. You know what I mean? Like when you listen to records, like new records now that are just like maxed out the whole time.
You can hear it,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just like after a while, it's like, all right, it's enough.
It doesn't sound genuine to the sound of the band. Yeah, for sure.
To me, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Some people like it, but I've never been a fan.
Taste issue, right?
Yeah.
So, but it does sound like there's a little bit of like maybe Telecaster accent on just kind of like small Fender or something like that to accent, like rum to whiskey.
Right.
There's a little bit of that. There's one little lick, like in the second sort of time around in that song.
Right. I think in the choruses too, we did some extra stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, we tend to do that.
Yeah.
I don't remember because it's 25 years ago.
Sure.
And,
Sure.
But I do remember that the foundation was definitely what we had, and then we would add a little bit more stuff to it, but not a ton. I'm telling you, it's
there's
very
not a lot. It's deliciously raw. In a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Speaking of guitar, I got to ask. I lived a time in the Pacific Northwest, so Ron Heathman from Super Suckers.
Oh, okay.
Shows up on Lemuria Rising.
Oh, right.
How did that happen, right? Was that prearranged? Did they just, were they bowling and they're like, dude, you got to come, like...
They probably were friends with him, right?
Some shreds.
They probably were friends with him. Probably told him to come by. I mean, the other thing about Seattle at that point, which, was not unlike Brooklyn or Williamsburg in the 2000s, was people did come to visit.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Oh my God, Murder City Devils are making a new record with some weird guy from New York. You know what I mean? Like, let's go pop in and see how they're doing.
Right.
Because it was always a fun hang. You know what I mean? So that happened. It was very, very social. I mean, when I was working with the Trees there, like, Cantrell and Lane from Alice in Chains separately came by to visit and just hang out.
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean? And it was like all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay.
Oh, hi.
Yeah, all right. Hi.
Yeah. And, Kim Warnick from Fastbacks, shows up on I'll Come Running. So
beautiful.
Just sort of organic, friends of friends of friends.
I think that was more planned because it was such a mellower song. They wanted to get a different
vibe to it.
Yeah. I think that was planned. That was part of the plan.
So talking about vocals, I'll Come Running and some of the vocals, you talked about Spencer being out in the hall, you said.
Well, that was only for the basic tracks.
Okay.
We didn't keep any of that stuff.
But Lang has like this built-in chamber, right? Did you use that? I mean, it has a kind of really what's the best way to put it? Like a Capitol sound. We're getting that sort of bounce back, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember how
I don't think we used it.
No.
No, because I also am not sure that was operational when we were there.
Yeah.
To be quite honest.
Okay.
It would have been something I would have recorded and added to on a different track. But once again, we were also on 24-track analog, so we didn't have a ton of options. And I feel like I didn't really do a ton of effects to his vocals. I just, just maybe a little slap back, slap back, and that was it. My bad joke I had at Lang. And Robert would come in every now and then. He was really super nice. But, after a while, he was, also building out the studio to make it bigger.
Yeah.
And my joke was, someone would say, where's Robert? And I was like, oh, he went back there with a really big spoon and he's digging out some, and they would be like, you fucking idiot.
Even to this day, I mean, that's kind of the joke. Like, he's still, trucking wheelbarrows out to the street.
The dude was a fucking legend. I will say, and I love that room. I don't know if I did like a half a dozen records there. You know what I mean? And it was just always so fun. And I'll tell you really quick, off topic, but I'll say it really fast. I think it was the first day of setting up for the Murder City Devils, where I got there early because, I had to set up mics and do all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I opened the door to walk in, and Mike Watt walks out. And I'm like, and I know him from the Fire Hose days in '96. I did a record with him in LA. And I was like, Mike, what's going on? And he's like, oh, I'm in there. We're in there with the band this morning, but we know you're coming to set up, so we had to get finished. And I was like, oh, what are you, rehearsing? And he was like, Agnello, actors rehearse, bands practice. And that was the end of the conversation. I was like, all right, Mike, I got to go in and set up drums.
Places to be. Thanks for talking.
So, Mike, it was so good. It was the funniest fucking thing.
Oh, man. So... the rumor is that Spencer's a big Neil Diamond fan, right? I mean, was any of that...
No.
None of that taken into consideration, like when you're processing the vocal reverb.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
I thought, see, now listening to his lyrics and the way he delivers stuff, I thought he was like the punk rock version of like Bob Dylan, like a master storyteller,
right?
But super darker. You know what I mean? It was almost like if Bob Dylan wrote Sinners.
Right.
I'm sorry, if the guys in Sinners, the movie, wrote Bob Dylan lyrics.
Right. Okay.
That's what Spencer would be.
Okay.
Because like listening to Press Gang and you know what I mean? That shit's dark.
Yeah, for sure.
But you know, not like fake dark, like really emotionally dark.
Poetically dark.
Dark.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I still, you know, listening to a lot of the record, like he tells stories.
Yeah, for sure.
He tells really, really
for sure
interesting, but on the dark side stories.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that endears this album to people even now, is that it's not just, you know, 2-minute punk songs. Man, there's a whole lot to it. There's depth to it. You know,
Layers.
It's not. It wasn't the simplicity of sort of that garage punk that was evolving during that time. Kind of the void of grunge sort of not being sold to us anymore, right? But
and more theatrical.
Yeah, for sure.
How about that? That's the thing that I just thought about, is like between the organ and all that, there's like a theatrical element to it that is really like,
I mean,
so
I think of watching any movie from the 50s when the organ swell happens, you know something's about to go down, right? And that's kind of the feel, I guess, that that this album sort of has. So I'm gonna geek out for a friend here for a second. Talk to me about the desk you were using. I mean, were you using an SSL kind of G series or API?
I think it was an API.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was an API because I was an API guy back then.
Yeah, you're rumored to be an API guy.
Yeah, so the rumors are true.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah. So it basically did what you wanted it to do.
I think part of my allure, well, just to backtrack, and this is the God's honest truth, if it was an SSL console, I would have been scratching my head the whole time. I have no idea. Those consoles are so, you know, complicated.
Right.
There's so much going on. And what I loved about the API stuff was it sounded great. And for me, in my humble opinion, I'm no tech, the reason it sounded so great is because there were less things it went through. The processing was way less.
Right.
So the sonics were way pure.
Okay.
And that's why I'm pretty sure it was a API, because I know APIs like the back of my hand.
Gotcha.
And I worked there, you know, I mean, I guess I had an assistant, but I still, you know, did all the engineering and all that shit. So, I'm pretty sure it was an API.
Yeah, that was a question we were, you know, off cameras, we're sort of prepping to have you here. It was like, was it an SSL? What was there in Robert Lang at the time? And there was a debate. Was it like an SSL G series or an API? Or
I think it was an API. I mean, maybe it was a Neve, but I'm not sure. I want to think it was an API. I really do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, regardless, had to ask for a friend.
Yeah.
I'll
Who's
just
the
say
friend?
that. He's sitting here in the room. So
I don't think I could have mixed on an SSL.
So you tracked it and mixed it on the same board there. So
there.
Probably API. Okay.
I would have been beside myself if I had to mix on an SSL. I just
the lore is true.
No, just because I didn't really, I've never worked with them. You know, I've never worked on them, and I wouldn't really know what the fuck I was doing, and I couldn't mix a whole record like that by myself. You know.
Yeah.
No, it had to be an API.
Okay. All right. Well, talk about the vibes around this session, right? You know, you've got Heathman sitting in, you've got folks showing up. What are the vibes around this sort of session? I mean, these guys are rumored to be notorious partiers on tour, you know. I mean, what's kind of going on in the room, like between takes or that sort of thing?
Yeah, I feel like there was partying going on, but it was mostly like at the end of the night.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I feel like everybody was under the gun. And I think I was also a little more strict.
Okay.
With, like, you know what I mean?
Setting that tone.
Yeah, well, you know, getting work done.
Right.
You know, like I didn't walk out to take a cigarette break because we were working. And then, you know, when we take a dinner break, I'd go have a smoke or something or whatever, or at the end of the night.
Right.
And, you know, I was not on the phone ever. I was constantly, we were just working. And we did, you know, pretty successfully long days. But there was drinking. I know there was drinking. I know there was booze. But it was also, I think, once we finished the basic tracks, whoever wasn't working could hang out and party in the control room.
Okay.
I know that.
Okay.
I couldn't drink until like the evening because if I started at 2:00, it would be a total debacle.
Right.
And I had to really kind of push them.
Right.
But once again, I think, and also the vibe was great. I think I just remember everybody getting along great, considering like 3 or 4 of them didn't know me before, you know me well.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We all had fun in the control room, and I also have that, you know, dumb sense of humor, and I make fun of myself. So they felt probably like, you know, this guy's like a nut. It's fine. And they were nuts. So, but like I said, I really, Leslie for me was such a perfect person to be in the band because I really did, like, I didn't have a crush on her or anything, but I really did just love her as a person. Like, I knew her for years, and she was just always so much fun.
Yeah.
So that really helped with me just, you know, having a buddy.
Right.
You know, that I know for years.
Yeah.
But no, the vibe was great. They were really fun to work with. And honestly, I feel like maybe there were 1 or 2 times it got like a little like, but not really much. And a little bit, once again, I think it did get a little tense with I'll Come Running because it wasn't, not everybody wanted to do it.
Huh.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
It was like it was kind of like an outside idea, I think, or one of the people's ideas.
But it's probably one of the more striking songs.
Well, dude, it's amazing.
It stands out obviously
because of the way he sings it. Totally different with what's her name's on, you know.
Yeah.
And the way it's approached, it's not a punk song. It's like really a beautiful song.
The harmonies of it, the way it's built up, it's beautiful.
Yeah, Kim. Sorry.
Yeah.
But no. But yeah. But I know that was a little stressful. But other than that, I just don't remember having really any major problems, you know, like, we just did it. We did it fast, and it came out really well, and they were really happy. Like, it wasn't even like I had any misgivings about, I wish I would have done this or that or whatever. So, no, I have only good memories about it. And once again, I was infatuated with Seattle at that point. I had a ton of people I'd worked with and knew there, so you know what I mean. It was it was like my second home. Right, so. Right.
Having lived in the Pacific Northwest during that time, it was just a fantastic place to live. And that whole like mid '90s to early aughts. So you know, let's talk about the legacy of this, because when it came out in 2000, people who were into punk, you know, pure punk, loved it. Great response to it. And I think that's why it's had kind of a lasting legacy, because, you know, post-Nirvana era, you had sort of this creation of pop punk. Green Day, Blink-182, you know, everybody suddenly saw punk as being not so dangerous anymore. And punk purists probably reacted against that. And so you had sort of this, we'll call it garage punk sort of stuff that started springing up. I would argue that the first 2 Murder City Devils albums were prime examples of that sort of garagey, I don't want to say not overly produced, but just produced in a different way, fuzzy, lo-fi, fuzzy around the edges. You know, small amps in somebody's garage is what it sounded like, right? You know, what kind of impact do you think that Murder City Devils would have had maybe long term had they stuck together? You know, because famously they kind of they broke up really relatively soon after the release of this album. But then you saw sort of this garagey, let's just call it garagey rock revival. You know, you had the Vines, the Strokes, the Hives, all kind of popping up in that.
Right, that's like the 2000s. That's like
2002. You know,
Williamsburg. That's the Williamsburg vibe.
Exactly.
The art, like kind of indie rock, alternative rock, or something.
Yeah, arty garage. I mean, we can make up all kinds of genres probably to describe it. Can you see that influence? I mean, does that?
I mean, I honestly felt not. I mean, I felt like if they would have stuck together, did a bunch of touring, you know what I mean, they would have been perfect for like a Lollapalooza scenario, playing either the first stage or the second stage. You know what I mean? They were like right in the middle of the set at like 4 o'clock. They would have been great doing that. Right. And I know that Lollapalooza towards the end of the 90s had a lot of those bands you were referring to.
Sure.
Green Day and all that stuff, and they became the focus of Lollapalooza.
Right.
Where in the beginning, Lollapalooza was more of kind of like, Pearl Jam did their first tour, I think it was 92, and they played third on the main stage, even though they were blowing up as that was happening.
Right.
And then Eddie's climbing around the stage of Lollapalooza, on the rafters.
The famous crane shot, right?
Yeah.
Where he's like hanging off the crane.
But the point is, I think they would have really made an impact. They would have given, they would have given a fresh taste of what they were doing to people, you know what I mean? And I think it would have been sustainable. Like if I'm not, whatever. I'll just say it's for me. I would have loved to have gone in and made a second record with them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And tweaked it a little to make it like just a little different, maybe a little more, some kind of angles, elbows, to just so it's not the same kind of record.
Right.
But that would have been really awesome to do. But the nice thing is, In Name and Blood is always going to be there. It's always their record.
Yeah.
People are always going to love it.
Right.
You can't, and I even say that about me. Look, I wish I would have done another record with them, but I did do that record. So when people hear that record, I did it. So I get my, you know what I mean? I get, I feel good about being involved with it.
Right. So, and I'm sure it's tough to like what if it with whatever band you work with.
For
right?
sure.
So
Yeah.
No, that's great. Hey, I really appreciate you taking the time being here. It's great to talk to you. Tell us, what are you working on? Anything exciting, life stuff? What's going on with you now? I mean, we talked about 25 years ago, but you're still working, right?
Yeah, still working.
Yeah.
I'm doing good. Like, it's been a weird year. Only because in August, well, now I turned 66. So last year was a weird year because I turned 65, and then my wife was like, it's your birthday, you got to call for Medicare. And I was like, what? And she was like, we have to call Medicare right now. So we did that on my birthday, and I was like, holy shit, I'm officially old. I became a grandfather. We became grandparents also a month before, which was amazing.
Yeah, congratulations.
But at the same time, my method is to act really immature so I don't seem old. You know what I mean? That works for me.
Sure.
And dress really funny and stuff like that. But work-wise, I'm still really busy. I've got I'm doing a lot more indie stuff now. You know what I mean? But the records are coming out on vinyl. People are touring. It's really fun. I'm working currently with a band I love that I've been a fan of for like a year now called No Bro out of Montreal, and they're a rock band. You could tell they love Nirvana and stuff like that. They can play fast, and she could shout or she could sing. But we did one song up in Montreal in early August, and then they loved it, so I'm going to go back and do the rest of the record in November. So they're like my favorite right now. But I also did a record with Laura Stevenson, and then I did a record with a band called Zopa, who Michael Imperioli's, it's his band, or he's the main guy. And, a New Orleans band called Loose Cattle, where Michael Severus is an actor who's in. It's like, it's just funny how stuff changes,
right?
But still mixing a lot, and no complaints, and in fact, pretty busy for the rest of the year. It looks like I'm going to be gone a lot of November.
Okay.
October I'm pretty booked. So, as long as I'm enjoying still working, and we were talking about pre-production and stuff. I really do love to sit down and go through songs and just try to make them, give 10 comments about how to make them quote unquote more fun, more interesting, more earworms.
Right.
And then if the artist likes the ideas, we use them. If they don't, I don't really care. If it's their songs, you know what I mean? If they don't want to do blah blah blah, it's fine. But like with the No Bro kids, I went up there with a list of ideas, and they were so like, oh my god, that's so, they really enjoyed it. So now we're like really, and we talk all the time. They're like great kids, and I literally love hanging out with them. They're so much fun. And as a guy with a 36-year-old daughter and a 19-year-old daughter, you know what I mean? Like the No Bro girls are like somewhere in between
in
there.
between, yeah.
And I feel very comfortable with them. And honestly, not unlike, in 21 when I was in Chicago doing the first Horse Girl record, because they were all 17 and 18.
Right.
And we had so much fun doing the record. I really just enjoyed it, and, they were great. So
very cool. Well, no, bro, we'll be looking out for that.
Definitely.
So see if we can, we'll watch them blow up soon.
I think it's October 24th is the single comes out that we just did.
Okay. We'll be on the lookout.
We're getting ready to master, and they just want to put it out now to have something out. But they're really, you're going to see. If you like rock, like that kind of stuff, you're going to love this, because it's so powerful.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll be on the lookout for it.
Great.
All right. John, thanks for coming out here.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, making the drive. I mean, we know it was a little crazy getting here today, but
it's like that 5 o'clock thing in the triangle. There's traffic everywhere.
Yeah.
So I didn't even think about
Raleigh
that.
traffic, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but whatever. No, this is great. And good to see you guys. Great to meet you, by the way.
Great to meet you. I appreciate you coming up. So
All right, thanks.
Hopefully, I'll go ahead and ask. Maybe we can do a follow-up sometime soon,
Sure.
Just have you out, talk about what you're doing. And
or pick something else that you want to talk about or whatever. Just
sure.
You guys let me know, and we'll do it when we're all available.
Yeah.
Easy.
Sounds good.
Great.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for sticking around for episode 1 of Public Access Punks, where we were talking with John Agnello. Shout out to Strong Arm Baking in Oxford, North Carolina for providing our location for the recording. If you liked what you heard, please share it with your friends, and subscribe. Leave us a comment. Let us know how we're doing.